Is this thing on?
Is this thing on? Oh, yeah, right there. You're going to smudge up the thing.
Did I smudge it?
You dog. Top notch. Top notch technology. Gosh.
How do the kids say it? They say, we out here.
We out here.
We out here.
Fucking we ball.
This is the CapmLew Podcast with your host, CapmLew, for what it's worth, and Brother Luke.
There I am.
Co-captain.
Co-captain.
He's asking the big questions. We're going deep. It is episode number 34.
Indeed.
And this is recorded on Saturday, the 28th of January. We know all the numbers. We got all the numbers.
Barely hanging on by a fingernail.
We wiped the lens on the iPad.
After we touched it on the Facebook Live.
I had to tap it to see if this thing is on.
How do you expect me to know if the thing's on if I don't tap on the lens itself?
You say, is this thing on?
and then you tap it.
Tap twice.
Gosh, dude, they feel like a fish in a fishbowl.
Yeah. You tap it any more than twice, you're playing with it. Here we go.
Oh my gosh, Dad.
CapmLew Podcast. I'm CapmLew. This is, for what it's worth, the CapmLew Podcast, and we have a really tough. We've had a tough last week because the San Francisco Standard. Hang on.
God.
All right.
Oh my God, dude. My wife is throwing up right now. She's so disgusted by us, dude. Babe, the cat turds are gone though, or the mouse turds are gone.
Yeah, we vacuumed up. There are none. No, there isn't.
Is there one? Is that one right there?
All. Oh, I left that one. I left that one for you specifically. Let me see. Is that a mouse turd?
I think it's a mouse turd.
It has the physical.
He picked it up and it's in his hand. Please don't crush it.
It rolls like a mouse turd. Yeah.
Danger! Ah!
No, I threw it on the carpet where it's clean.
Yes. Low terrain. Pull up.
For those of you who don't know, this is the Upper Sanctum where we
Yes.
do the podcast. It's a great little studio setup. If you think a great studio setup is having two $20 lavalier mics, two iPhones, and an iPad. It reminds me of a Beck song.
Yeah, we out here.
Two turntables and a microphone.
Oh, yeah. I didn't like Beck very much. Sorry.
Oh, I did enjoy it. I've enjoyed me some Beck. But it's been a tough last couple weeks because the San Francisco Standard has been coming out with... Luke, how many articles are there? Is it just two?
There's dose.
There are two. The San Francisco Standard, and it appears that the Phelps family has been pushing the envelope to go public with what happened to Jake Phelps. And what happened to Jake Phelps is not just answered by the events of the day that Jake died, but is answered by a legacy of multiple decades of enabling behavior by the powers that be. And these powers are powerful. These are the guys who hold the narrative of skateboarding in a vice-like grip.
True.
They have been historically able to erase people from skateboarding in terms of, career and sponsorship and all this stuff. So, they're out the window go our chances.
Yeah.
No, the age of self-publishing, really, and the shift of media to self-published media has really helped us all. And now a conversation is necessary.
Yeah.
The first article in summary, I'll start saying that.
In summary.
Before I go on a 20
25
verbal
minute
screed.
Yeah, right. Summary.
In summary, the first article was, hey, Jake died from a fentanyl overdose.
Yes.
Hey, Jake was in really rough shape mentally, physically, and had a massive substance abuse problem. And if you didn't know that, watching King of the Road and reading Thrasher magazine and seeing this going on, then you were in a hidey hole.
Yeah.
This next article, I'd like it, Luke, if you would give your summary on it.
Yeah, it's just a kind of a deeper dive on Vitello's
Who's the author of these? Can you say?
Let me. The author.
This is from January 23rd, I believe.
Yes, it's David, and he has some sort of Swedish or Norwegian last name.
Oh,
that I
yeah.
can't just.
Let me give it a shot. David Sjosted.
Sjosted?
Probably Sjosted.
Sjosted.
Because Sjogren is a name we know around here, but it's probably Sjosted.
It's like got J's and D's and S's in it.
Sjosted.
This one is more focused on Tony Vitello's perspective on Jake and kind of the way that he handled Jake's addiction and the way that he handles Jake's passing, which I think it's a great vignette. I mean, it's a perfect touch point to talk about the way that skateboarding has been, and I think kind of vindicated the position that you've had for a long time about the way that skateboarding is like a family and that they're super incestuous and they like to keep secrets.
And we mean business-wise incestuous.
Yes, exactly.
Not
yes.
in terms of families
right.
that are
yes.
sexually misbehaving.
Right, but there are some connections there which are dark.
Vitello is a last name that we're hearing.
Yeah.
Tony is accredited in the article to be the owner of Thrasher magazine. I am almost certain that there are multiple owners of almost every California concern out there.
Yeah.
But Tony is the son of Fausto Vitello. Fausto Vitello and Eric Swenson are pioneers in skateboarding media, as well as the inventors and promulgators of indie trucks, independent trucks.
Yeah.
They are bigwigs, shot callers. And both Fausto and Eric come from the biker lane.
Yeah.
And weren't really serious skateboarders, which is very interesting. They were in skateboarding. They directed skateboarding in a time in the Craig Stesick era of skateboarding media. Stesick is featured in the Smithsonian for his work in skateboarding journalism and for idealizing, I don't mean that in a negative sense, but presenting the ideals of skateboarding freedom and creativity. And Stesick comes from an era where skateboarding was soaked in a fairly cynical brand of, disenfranchised surfer, core, locals only, stuff that is actually really, really good marketing for fashion.
Yeah.
Billions and billions of dollars, billions of dollars per year are scored off of coin-holding Americans through the ad copy that runs along these ethical lines. And so Thrasher magazine is a big deal culturally.
Yeah.
It's been referred to as the Bible.
The Bible.
By skateboarders for years and years. And those who stood in contrast to Thrasher magazine, whether it be the more palatable trans world skateboarding, which fell more into the softer surfer magazine style presentation of skateboarding,
right,
to the kind of radically open-minded concrete wave magazine of Michael Brooks, and others. There's Skateboard Mag, and there's For the Crew, and there's all kinds of publications. But Thrasher held total dominance, being aligned with major distributions and historic San Francisco values in skateboarding. And here in Cincinnati, we have a major dose of San Francisco values, 90s era San Francisco values, because we are the landing place of some of the former greats of that era.
Yeah.
And Cincinnati has always, in my opinion, been highly derivative in the mainstream skateboarding culture here. They've almost always modeled that skateboarding should be what Thrasher magazine tells us it is.
Sure.
That's at the core level. Oh, core.
Yes.
So all this core stuff that's been going on for decades, and anyone who had the audacity to question it was at first just told they're a kook or not a real skater. Then basically the attempts to run people out of town and like that. Not a lot of people have had the wherewithal to stand a strong contrast to these things, because in the industry you just get pummeled. All the ad dollars are with Thrasher. On and on. Okay, on and on. Just a total rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But now, for the cost of 3 small devices, which is like $5,000.
Yeah, I know, they're so
It's
expensive.
like
dude.
$5,000
they're
for
so expensive.
an iPad Pro and 2 iPhones that
Yeah.
are up to date.
Yeah.
That's nuts. It's probably $2,400 for these 2 and probably $800 for the iPad. So it's
Yeah.
not $5,000.
$3,200 though.
Yeah, plus $20 in lavalier mics
Right, and paying for Podbean and the Wi-Fi that we on and on. It's probably around $5,000.
per year. Podbean is
44, almost $500.
yeah, it's not cheap to us
Yeah.
as self-publishers with no giant revenue to speak of. Please sponsor the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, God, please.
Yeah, we don't sell ad space, but we will take on sponsors for the podcast.
Yes.
There's absolutely no reason not to. In fact, upcoming,
Yes.
in the middle of trying to introduce a very sad and very serious topic, we're going to do a review of slappy trucks.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
That will be fun.
I can't
And
wait.
I am in the mood for something fun because this is a bummer.
Yes. We need a palate cleanser.
We are not going to get one on this podcast.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep it light. But so the first article just broached the topic that Phelps had a serious substance abuse problem.
Yeah.
Thing is, we all knew it.
Yeah, it was way out in the open the entire time.
And not only did he have that, he also exhibited the kind of autocratic, what do they call it? A megalomaniacal, like
Yeah.
a person who has decided that they are the gatekeeper.
Yes.
Jake, R.I.P.,
Yep.
did not demonstrate good character as a person in a place of extremely high influence.
Yeah.
And I think that our admiration of him for whatever admirable qualities he did exhibit,
Yep.
perhaps tenacity,
Yeah, and determination, and perhaps some people could say courage
sure.
or foolishness. I think it's kind of a fine line.
Well, maybe someone would say bravery.
Yeah.
I'm not highly sympathetic to those arguments. I was not in my time. I was not an admirer of Phelps or his work,
No.
and that needs to be said. I have a bias.
Yeah.
I saw the work of Thrasher magazine as being fundamentally detrimental to the psyche, to the well-being of its readers.
Yeah.
I've always seen that and always said so, even though I didn't. I was more interested in my previous career as a brand owner of lambasting the low-value version of skateboard deck production that we get and the cheap mercenary garbage culture of marketing that gets done on them.
Yep.
In these days, we're turning our eyes to the source, and we're very sad that what I knew from day one, having had a source tell me, that Jake did indeed die, much like Monk
Yep.
and so many others that we've lost.
Yep.
Grasso
Yep. And the first article
died from
mentioned
opioid overdose.
Yeah, 2 other names, people doing cocaine that they didn't know had fentanyl in it and got rocked, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's really, really sad.
Point of order: Fentanyl
Yep.
is pronounced fentanyl.
Fentanyl. Fentanyl. It's
It's,
not an all.
Folks are
it's an
calling
L.
it fentanyl and like that. It'll do. It's fine. Just for my own palate.
Yes.
And opioid overdose is spreading through the nation. It is, by some measures, I looked into the stats on it.
Mm-hmm.
It is. They're unable to say fentanyl is the number 1 killer of people between 18 and 45, but opioid overdose is presently clocking at about number 1, and by some scales at number 1 by a good margin.
Oofda.
The number 1 killer of people 18 to 45. This is actually a really big deal.
Yes.
It's not a small deal. And what this means a lot of things for you as a listener, a thinker, a person who will muse about these things. We'd like to think that we'll provoke you to thought. What this means is that these friends that you're so loyal to these celebrities that you have in these magazines, some of them have demonstrable complicity in these deaths.
Yeah.
Some of these Hollywood or San Francisco or big industry people have been perfectly content to see these folks slide off the edge of the world in destruction.
Yeah.
And have been perfectly content to allow them to encourage others along the same path.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about it, man. Even this article. Why don't we get into the article if you want to?
Yeah, I got it. I got it right here.
It's driving me nuts.
Do you want to read it? It's a little bit long.
It's long.
There are 3 points that I think we should hit.
Pull it.
Yeah, so quickly. One of them is Vitello's interaction with the truth and about what happened with Jake Phelps. The second one is about Jake Phelps' attitude about skateboarding and the way that related to his death. And the third one is about Thrashers' relationship with party culture. So
let's do that. That's well done.
Yeah, so the first one we'll hit right here is Vitello's relationship with Jake's death. We'll just read this little blurb here. It said, Vitello said he first heard of Phelps' death while in Texas at one of Thrasher's skate events, recalling that he had a bad feeling immediately after Phelps' girlfriend called him saying she hadn't heard from him. Next came the heartbreaking work of informing Phelps' family, friends, and eventually the fans. Vitello, this is a quote, "There was some concern about Jake's parents' reaction to how he passed, and my position was, and always has been, that his family's word is the word I go by. That's why we're here in this interview today, because Mary Phelps told me that she wants to talk about it and that she thinks it's important to talk about. I'll go out and say it. It was hard for me because I had been covering up Jake's behavior and drug use for a while." And then it goes on to explain the way that Vitello covered that up.
Is that the anecdote wherein Jake was filmed?
Yes.
On one of the King of the Road episodes,
yes.
And Tony stood the line that if you print that, we're done.
We're done.
You need to erase that. That needs to not be in the the feed. Although watching those episodes of King of the Road, it was my takeaway that I can only imagine how blasted he must have been.
Yeah, because he's always a little bit blasted on there, so he must have been super duper bad for them to stop it.
It was really sad. It was like watching a punch drunk boxer.
Right.
You know, who's got Parkinson's from boxing.
Yep.
You're looking at a damaged person. You're looking at human wreckage, and it's being lifted up as exemplary.
Yeah.
And it's being lifted up as aspirational material.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be inspired to be somehow hardcore and diehard. This is what it looks like to be a diehard skateboarder.
Yeah.
Which brings into question, well, I think we'll get to this at the end, because Phelps's decline in skateboarding and the relationship of his self-worth and self-image in regard to those comes into place. We'll address that later.
Yeah, maybe you want to just hit the 3 points really quick and then we can discuss them. So the second one is Phelps' relationship with skateboarding that I think drove him to some degree to the end that he came to. It says here, this is a quote from Vitello. It said, "Pain was an obvious part of it. Jake loved skateboarding so much and needed to be on his skateboard all the time. Needed to be. One of the things I got from Jake was that you got older and skateboarding stays the same age. There's that nagging voice in so many of our heads as we get older and maybe can't skate at the same level or dealing with injuries or whatever it might be. People have kids, they have careers, there are other things that are preventing them from skating. You start to question whether or not you're still a real skateboarder. He needed skateboarding. It was his fucking lifeblood, and he just kept doing it when he was hurt."
We could do a whole episode on what's going on right there. What's the last one?
The last one,
unbelievable,
dude. Yeah,
unbelievable, bro.
The last one is Thrasher's relationship with the party culture. Here we go. Phelps' death and the death of many other skaters from drugs and alcohol has intensified the need for public discourse about substance abuse in the skate community, Vitello said. Coming forward to the standard about Phelps' cause of death is among several efforts he's making to facilitate that conversation. Then here's a quote from Vitello. "We've been trying to have the conversation more addressing alcohol-related issues in the magazine and not necessarily glorifying the partying, period. Unfortunately, there's marketability to that behavior and to those lifestyles, and people use it to sell things. Everybody's guilty of that to a certain extent. He acknowledged that skateboarding has a long documented marriage with partying, but said that the issues stemming from that relationship are most prevalent in San Francisco.
It makes me feel so angry.
Yep.
For decades, lots of people, I am not a rare bird, lots of people have known that Thrasher is a toxic cesspool of encouragement to destroy yourself and live a foolish and wasteful life.
Yep.
They have been blind guides. And yet somehow the power to drive people out of a DIY that they even help to fund, to slander their good name. This is not just me. This is people in anyone who raised a flag on the play, called a kook and driven out effectively.
Yeah.
All this time. And it was Phelps holding the standard for this army of honestly really brainwashed people who'd been changed by their taking on of this ideal as a living platform. Thank you, skateboarding. Skateboarding is my life. Skateboarding saved my life. And they're talking about this.
Yeah.
It's all encapsulated. And as adults, we are supposed to slow down and stop and look at what's inside the capsule.
Right. The one thing that is, of the 3 points, because they're all extremely important to talk about, and again, I think vindicate the position that we've taken about skateboarding to some extent, if not entirely. One of the ones that just drives me bonkers is the idea that Phelps was driven to drug use and the abuse of fentanyl and other narcotics because he felt like skateboarding represents the totality of my life. And if I can't do it, that means my life is worthless. And my position on that is that it is not true, my dudes. It's not true. And not only that, but that's such a perfect vignette of the type of attitude about skateboarding that makes it so terribly unsustainable.
Dude.
Like your life will be destroyed on the rocks of fame and freedom and all the hedonism and all the consequence. And you can see that Phelps was totally driven by it because his entire thing was, you fucking got to commit every time. You got to commit every time. And then
no, you don't.
He hits his fucking head. He destroys his elbow. And in the first article, they talked about that as a launching off point of his drug use is when he really hurt his arm.
It was not though. It was not though, because Jake was wasted all the time in publicly. I look, man, I love you, but what happened.
No, yeah.
Publicly belligerent, incendiary, offensive on purpose, intoxicated regularly. Right. Yes, the knee happened. Yes, the elbow happened. Probably a bad hip in there too. Yes. I mean, all kinds of broken downness. All driven by ideas. All driven by ideas and ideology. One time, I was attacked publicly by an author who had been writing successful pieces. I was attacked, and I was accused of being, quote, an ideologue, unquote. as if being an ideologue was some big disqualifier.
Yeah.
And my response then and now remains, everyone's an ideologue, bro.
Yeah.
But what are the values of their driving ideas? That's the contention that we need to do as adults. We need to be contentious as adults, to be brave and tenacious and say, hey, I want good ideas to drive my life.
Yeah.
Thrasher is a motherlode of bad ideas.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Right.
If I ever saw a publication that calls evil good and good evil, it's Thrasher. All the time. It's a joke.
Yeah, no, it's
like a joke.
It's totally ingrained in the attitude, 100%.
They treat it like it's funny.
Right.
But judge a tree by its fruit. You know, they treat it like it's funny. Like that's Pal Peralta with the laughing skull. It can be funny to a certain point, but if you judge a tree by its fruit, there's a lot of death and incarceration and just sorrow left in the wake of the mainstream narrative of skateboarding culture. Skateboarding tells a story about itself.
Yep.
Right there, you need to be asking questions. You and that skateboard of yours have a good thing going. That's cool. Okay?
Yeah.
But this is a bridge far too far for far too long.
And it's hilarious, too, because, like, if the words that just came out of Lew's mouth rankle you in some way, then listen to the words that are coming out of the owner of Thrashers' mouth, because he's literally saying it in this article. It is verbatim. He's the one saying all the things that we're talking about. The connection is right there. I mean, this is nuts. So, specifically with the party culture, he literally says, we all know that it's totally marketable. We've been marketing on it the entire time. Not that it's totally ingrained in the culture. This is who we are. We're heathens and outlaws. No.
Yeah.
We've been marketing on it the entire time. You know what I mean? Like,
read it again.
Yeah.
Read that part about marketing.
Yeah,
This is crazy, guys. It's
Yeah.
nuts.
Here it is right here. Phelps' death and the death of many other skaters from drug and alcohol has intensified the need for public discourse about substance abuse in the skate community, Vitella says. Coming forward to the standard about Phelps' cause of death is among several efforts he's making to facilitate that conversation. Then here's Vitella quoting. We've been trying to have the conversation more, addressing alcohol-related issues in the magazine and not necessarily glorifying the partying. Unfortunately, there's marketability to that behavior and to those lifestyles, and people use it to sell things. Everybody's guilty of that to a certain extent. It's literally right there. He says it. It is the gnarliest thing.
I'm listening to those words, and you take them all down in a big gulp. But can we slow that down for a second? Can I hold it?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I just want to slow it down. We've been trying to have the conversation more. You own a magazine. You own the conversation. Who is stopping you from having as much of that conversation as your own conscience tells you? Oh, maybe your conscience doesn't tell you to do it much. Maybe your conscience isn't driving you very strongly. I'm asking this of Tony, but I'm asking it of all of us. Maybe your conscience is hindered because your mind is consumed with, what could do that? Let's see. Unfortunately, there's marketability to that behavior. Oh, there's what can hold back a conscience. There's what can hold back your mind from just doing it and having a hard conversation with skateboarding and suffering. What's the worst that could happen if Thrasher were to say, hey, sorry about the last 35 years. Really quick. We've had it all wrong.
Yeah.
We've been drinking polluted water for money. We pushed deadly culture. For money, we enabled toxic examples. And that's looking at the most dangerous part of it, which is the partying and the drug use that they've bundled in with what it means to be a skateboarder.
Yeah.
There's another thing that's really gross that Thrasher has done, and one of the prime victims of it is poor Jake himself.
Yeah.
Is this idea of being a real skateboarder. That's not a thing. This fiending for legitimacy and this fiending for authenticity, they should have been reserved for the greater concerns of life. The greater questions of God and the universe and justice and truth. And, there's a whole lot more that we can do with our time than learn a trick. But Thrasher was willing to give you a pat on the head for trying hard to be a real skateboarder. And I'm sorry, friends, a lot of your own, like, sucking on that tit comes from your own brokenness, your own frustration and fear, and they preyed on you. And they were blind guides.
Yeah.
Leave them. Because everything about the way that he states that, listen to this. I'm picking it apart because we should. We have been trying to have the conversation more, addressing alcohol-related issues in the magazine and not necessarily glorifying the partying. That is very soft language. I imagine it's soft language born of a lifetime of enabling, of propping up the monetary structure around him.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for the suffering and the pain that these people are going through, but I do not have a lot of respect for that degree of uncertainty and weakness in statement. Unfortunately, there's marketability to that behavior and to those lifestyles, and people use it to sell things. Everybody's guilty of that to a certain extent. You know, they could just not have decided that people who don't party aren't real skateboarders. There are a lot of people who aren't everybody.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. Everybody's guilty of that to a certain extent.
No.
That might be true of the California elite who have run the mainstream narrative of skateboarding, the story that skateboarding tells about its own self.
Yeah.
And I don't want to capitalize or attach other people's names to what we're saying here. I'm not gonna name names, but I know of a guy in Boston who never learned to ollie, whose skateboarding is so inspiring and whose work in shaping decks and making something really, his art is just amazing, and the freedom of spirit and the integrity and the kindness with which he operates would never have made it into Thrasher. And it's not because they aren't awesome, inspiring, and interesting.
Right.
It's not because they wouldn't have sold magazines.
Right.
It's because his life doesn't affirm the very stringent, very narrow gatekeeping that our mainstream skateboarding media have made their Bible, your Bible.
Right.
And it is possible that some of our listeners have been fools. You might have been a fool and been fooled by these guys. And I can accept that. I like you.
Yeah.
I like you just like you are. But I certainly don't accept that you stay there. You got to change and grow.
Yeah.
You've got to slow down and think. And your conscience may be held back. Sadly, very few of you are making any money. You're doing it for free.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing it at a deficit because you're giving money to the big boys.
Giving money and blood to nothing.
To nothingness, yeah. It's so gnarly.
And it's still fun to go and play with skateboards the whole time.
Yeah, gosh, man.
But that's all it is. It's just fun. It's not the meaning of your life.
Right.
And all these things that you say you learned from skateboards, you could have learned the same perseverance, the same hard working, and the same things, learning to fix transmissions and be making $100 an hour. You know, that's just one small example of where this stuff sidelines us in life.
Right.
Chasing after what? High fives? Fist bumps? Bro hugs? Maybe the odd, sad, dangerous girl? Or casual hookup in a drug-induced haze of bad judgment? I'm summing up Thrasher culture.
Yeah. I feel like we were being a little bit too stringent, but as I'm thinking about it, I think that I am agreeing with you more and more.
It's just solid.
It sucks, dude.
It's just solid, but it sucks.
I wish I could disagree with you, yeah.
I do too.
Yeah,
I wish there was
a
a softer version. I wish I could say, oh man, this is awesome. This guy is a hero.
Yeah.
This guy's a hero. Look at him coming out, both guns blazing.
Right.
That is not both guns blazing.
Right.
And most of you can't get it. This guy thinks he's better than us. Whatever, dude.
We just can't kickflip, bro.
Go ahead and pull us to the point where Jake was tormented by not being able to be a real skateboarder anymore, and Tony is positing the idea, he's putting into play the idea that Jake fell into drug use like that because he was in such great pain through trying to continue the daring do.
Yeah.
And because his fundamental identity was baked in with being, quote, real skateboarder, unquote.
Yeah, this is a quote from Vitello. Pain was an obvious part of it. Jake loved skateboarding so much and needed to be on his skateboard all the time. One of the things I got from Jake was that you get older and skateboarding stays the same age. There's that nagging voice in so many of our heads as we get older, and maybe we can't skate at the same level or dealing with injuries or whatever it may be. People have kids. They have careers. There are other things that are preventing them from skating. You start to question whether or not you're still a real skateboarder. He needed skateboarding. It was his fucking lifeblood, and he just kept doing it when he was hurt.
Which is, okay, I'm going to be controversial.
Go ahead.
It's wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree with you fundamentally, yeah.
Oh, Lou, you're so judgmental.
I know.
It's wrong.
Yeah, it's at the very least tremendously unwise. That's what I just see it as ships crashing against the stone of time and ability, and you just feel like you have to do the tricks, you have to be at the same level, you got to keep the level up. And people bankrupt their entire lives on it, man. People get divorces and destroy their bodies for a sense of meaning and purpose. And from my perspective, there are other things far more effective to give us that sense of meaning and purpose than something as silly as skateboarding.
And maybe there isn't. Maybe the meaning and purpose that we're seeking, we're gonna find out that the kind of meaning and the kind of purpose that actually are available to us as human beings aren't what we thought they'd be.
Yeah.
Maybe we'd find ourselves involved in a cosmic drama in which we are not the main characters.
Insane.
And maybe the search for meaning and purpose is often misspent time. To some extent or another,
yeah, sure.
This purpose and meaning that people are deriving from the act of skateboarding,
yeah,
I think it's misplaced often. That's easy to say. It's a soft saying.
Yeah.
And I think if you're looking for meaning and purpose, that the wooden toy that we all enjoy so much, is not. It's not going to do it.
At the very least, I would say, if I had to put what you're saying into my own words, I would tell people we ought to be very, 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 extremely, very careful about what we place ultimate meaning and purpose on. Because from my perspective, in my opinion, skateboarding is not the thing. It is one of the most trivial and empty things to place ultimate meaning and purpose on. Now, I'm extremely compassionate and empathetic to people who are trying to figure it out. These are huge questions that wars have been fought over and people's lives have been destroyed over. It's very, very difficult to figure this out. And that's why we should be very, very careful about what we decide to place our entire lives into. You know what I mean? We ought to be super picky. We ought to be really, really picky. If you do a thing and you feel like that's what brings you total meaning and purpose, then I hope that you have thought about it deeply and that it holds absolute significant meaning to you, and that you're looking at the examples around you to see it from different perspectives. Because in my mind, skateboarding is not that. And if it is that, then you run the risk of dashing your life upon the rock. At the very least, I think that you're going to end up very disappointed, because someday you're going to be 80 and you just can't do it anymore. You know, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? If being a real skateboarder, whatever that means, some crazy, ethereal, ever-changing term, if that's what defines who you are, it's not gonna. You're a mess, bruv. You're a mess, bruv. Yeah. I love you. I love you. I care about you so deeply. Be careful. Be very careful. These are the things of fairy tales and archetypal stories. You know, like.
well, these are the witch that lives in the gingerbread house, man. She wants
Literally.
to bake you and eat you.
Yeah,
you know,
literally.
like
Come in for the candy, bro.
it's absolutely it's nuts. And what an infestation of, I believe in good and evil.
Yes.
What an infestation
Yeah.
of just bad doings
I know.
we've had in this exalted culture of real skateboarders. And will we take the lesson?
Probably not.
No, we almost, it's in human nature, we don't take the lesson.
Yeah.
Will we kill the messenger?
100%. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I've seen it before.
Well, I have a feeling that one way to deal with messengers is to swallow them whole.
Yeah.
And to offer them cozy incorporation into the greater defect.
Yeah.
We saw that when the emergence of some skate media that was offering critique happened in the earlier 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, Skate Line came out and just began to pick at the edges.
Yeah.
Just began to just gently, you know, Metro Skate Shop came out with Skate Line, and Gary Rogers began to just pick at the edges of the ego.
Yeah, there wasn't anything that we're talking about. We're
No,
getting right to that.
no.
We're just talking about the ego
but
and the
it
stupidity.
would have led to.
Yes, no, for sure.
It would have led the existence of critique, the existence of ridicule,
Yeah.
of the ego that was going on here.
Yeah.
It would have led to this happening to some extent or another more quickly.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, someone was going to say, nah, don't listen to these fools. They got it all wrong. They're taking skateboarding way too seriously, and they're skipping steps on what it is to be human.
Yep.
It was coming.
Yep.
And every now and then, a blog here, a Facebook post there, something would pop up that was more, you know, and then skateboarding showed itself able to swallow any sort of contrasting or contradicting stuff by, for example, the Me Too movement happened, which in itself was a very superficial treatment of a very long-term and very extreme thing.
Yeah.
And when the Me Too happened, all of a sudden skateboarding went, yeah. I mean, we've always been about that. Like, it was like they just shrugged and it went by like water off a duck's back.
Yeah, right, dude.
When the real story lay with the just crushed bodies of mostly women along the way, you know, or the insane bigotry that Thrasher and in the Big Brother era and everything, insane bigotry about private issues. Nobody should have ever, but they always did.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, see, we're great.
Right.
You know, they want a medal
Yep.
for being on the right side of an issue, and it was mostly marketing. Whenever it's marketable, truths can be said.
Yeah.
But accountability for the legacy is what's necessary. It's necessary for us to tear down the factory and retool the factory floor for new production.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean just tearing it down, but it might mean the fall of Thrasher magazine.
Yeah.
This could culminate in the loss of Thrasher magazine, because if they make the right pivot, which would be a quick pivot, they're either going to find a new market or they're going to lose market share.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, how many people have to die before they quit pushing that culture? Probably a lot.
Yeah.
Probably a lot more.
I'm interested in what you're saying. My Instagram handle and my handle on a lot of the intergalactic webs is Scorch the Earth. And one of the reasons it is that is because in my life there have been situations in which I have really recognized the need to literally go scorched earth policy on things that are important enough to dictate that kind of policy. And a lot of people, and I think Vitello is one of these exemplified in this article, when they get to a really hard issue, they kind of half-ass, half-step, and everybody around them goes, oh my gosh, it's so good that we're talking about this. I'm just so happy we can sweep this under the rug.
Hang a medal.
Yeah, and
they hang a medal on your neck.
Yep, and you get the Nobel Prize for being so brave. When in
reality, you get some sort of weird credit for how bad you feel.
Exactly. Instead of tearing the entire house down, ripping the foundation out,
back
and
to the studs,
literally all the way down, we just like changed a faucet in the bathroom.
They're like painting over, industrial strength kills primer. They're painting over black mold that has come through the drywall.
Yep.
It's all still in the walls. That's what we've done.
Yep.
That's what it's been. And that's what this kind of, I'm going to say it.
Go ahead.
Mealy-mouthed, as you said, Luke, half-assed approach.
Yeah.
Now, will it solidify? Tony's a human. He's a person. He's growing.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so.
I hope he rounds the corner and his conscience can wake up and he can say, you know what? It's worth more than money.
Yeah.
To say and do the right thing. There's a proverb in the Bible. It says the power of life and of death are in the tongue. And words, it's in the book of James that our tongues actually steer our bodies like a rudder.
Yeah.
And these ideas put forth in speech are the difference between getting on a solid course and staying off course by a few degrees.
Yeah.
Feels like you're parallel, but 10 years later, you're in different hemispheres, bro.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I just, it rankles me so hard because I've seen the damage that this kind of stuff does to people's lives in my personal life. If Otello was sitting here privately and asked me, what should I do? What should I do? I would tell him, bro, what about just shutting it down? Or what about...
Or tell the truth.
What about just telling the truth so habitually over the next 25 years? Boldly, that you lose everything.
Or you gain something...
Yes,
right?
It's like this stuff because the ethos is so ingrained into the culture. It's like a weed. It's like kudzu. I don't know if people have seen kudzu. It takes over entire forests. It kills entire forests. They literally will burn the entire forest to kill all the kudzu, and the next year it's back and even more stronger because all you did was blow out all the stuff that they couldn't grow. In like all the brush and stuff. It burns up the brush, the kudzu dies, but the roots are still in the ground. And we should be careful with things like this in our lives that are so tremendously important. If you want it to be dealt with, it must be scorched earth policy. You gotta salt it, it's gotta lay fallow for years, and then you come back and you start from the beginning and build up. And you can see the price that's paid. The price that be paid is so tremendously high. It is mind-blowing. And it's not just in the death of Phelps, it's people's entire lives being just crushed under the weight of it.
That's right.
It's so gnarly.
It's so true.
I'm also struck the ethos of skateboarding and the conversation of meaning and purpose is so immature. It is so childlike and
childish,
not childlike. Childish. You can see that people have decided, well, I don't know what the answer is. And that makes me so angry that my entire life journey is going to be anti-authority, anti-doing whatever anybody says. If it's good, then I want it to be totally bad. It's almost a rebellion. It's a manifestation of a person's personal chaos wanting to be made manifest in the world around them, to have some sort of congruency between the way that they feel on the inside and the way that they're experiencing the world on the outside. I really feel that a lot of outlaw cultures are built inside of that. And it makes me tremendously sad because I was a person like that and my life was on track to be destroyed. And I am not like that anymore. And my journey isn't like that because of the work of God and the saving work of Jesus in my life. Mm-hmm. And I wish that other people would have that. If that's not your cup of tea, I get it. That's fine. But please find something.
I know it's actually not fine.
It's not fine.
The idea that you could ignore such an amazing thing in history as the Son of God is remarkable to me.
Yeah.
And worthy of remark. There's this idea that keeps getting thrown out there. And I want to take that idea and go, all right then. Skateboarding is a big family.
Dude, don't get me started.
You know what? All right then, fools. So skateboarding is a big family. Well, Luke, you have a family.
I do.
I have a family.
Yeah.
I found something out in my family. Every now and then a good idea gets hold on me that hasn't yet got hold on my family.
Yeah.
And I noticed something. It makes Thanksgivings a little tense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that part of being, all right then, a family, part of being a family, you know, good families fight.
Yeah. Super healthy.
Good families fight. And you can go back in my Facebook feed and you can see that I've been a fighter for a long time. You can go skate with me, and I don't know if people do it on purpose just to hear it. But like, you can get me started, man. I'm like a chainsaw. You pull that ripcord and ring ding 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 ding, I'm going. Because I'm mad.
Yeah.
I'm mad because I got dead friends. I got dead friends who watch King of the Road and think it's a great idea to go out and die on drugs in tent out in California. Ride trains and do all that stuff and think that's the way to be. You think I'm not mad? It was Andy Roy, and it was Jake Phelps, and it was that whole culture that they pushed. And friends, I'm not going to take the time to make a compilation, but I have seen it spoken of as like a funny thing to just do meth.
Yeah.
I've seen it spoken of as just a funny, that's hilarious, about being in prison for drugs. So wasted. Oh, there's good times. You know, and I have seen, you know, like, since Phelps passed, Thrasher has had to splinter. And probably there are factions within Thrasher magazine. Probably there are cultures within Thrasher. They're probably going to drive certain people out. They're probably going to do certain things.
Yeah.
And obviously there are some holdouts who think this is just real cool. And they've got their puppets and they're putting their puppets up. But you, the listener, you, the viewer, we want to tell you, don't get robbed. These are blind guides. Leave them. There's an old saying that comes from an old book. It says, woe to those who call evil good and who call good evil. You know, the signs have been there the whole time. Anytime anyone is going to treat you as less than because of the brand of clothing you're wearing, the brand of shoes, or the store you shopped at, this was the point at which you could have known, don't go in with these guys.
Yeah.
This was the point.
Yeah.
You should have known from the time you were little, but probably you were like me, got your legs cut out from under you young by the difficulty that this world dishes out as part of its fundamental system.
Yeah.
You got to find a system that's beyond the system of this world. Fitting in this world is not good. I found it in the Son of God who died for me on the cross. I'd love to spend time explaining that to you in greater detail. I'm not going to take that time today. Today, we wanted to do some journalism. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
I don't think anything is real that this group puts out. They've put down decades and decades of virtue signaling and play acting as if they've always been cool.
Yeah.
There are hidden murders. There is the abuse of young people. I'm telling you right now that the mountain of evil deeds that have gone on in skateboarding may never be reckoned in our present age.
Straight up.
But they happened. And, you know, it's funny because the blood of Abel cried out from the ground and the Almighty heard it. And walking with the Almighty as a struggling Christian believer, every now and then I'll go somewhere and I will get a feeling. I get this in the Deep South, in one particular area of the Deep South, where there's almost, it's like humming with blood crying out from the ground. And I'm worried about these things, and it's worth worrying about. And no, I don't take these words spoken in the San Francisco Standard in this article. I don't take them as a change of direction. I'll judge a tree by its fruit.
Yep.
But I'll tell you this, Thrasher, I know you think it's a big ship, and I know that the Titanic couldn't turn on a dime. But, you know, speaking of the Titanic, turning is what it needed to do.
Yeah.
Or not being there in the first place.
Right. Or can't we give you any credit for at least trying? You know, like, couldn't we be sitting here saying, man, they really blew it, they didn't change anything, but at least they tried. At least we can give you some credit. At least somebody did something ever at all.
Imagine 5 years from now sitting here going, you know what I loved about Thrasher? What? The way they burned out at the end, trying to stop doing all the stuff that was the only thing they used to do. And, you know, that's funny because I think about Creature and Heschlaw and like the way that in the early 2000s, you know, we would drink in the Creature videos. And I remember watching David Gravett put out 3 parts in 1 year. And I remember watching him scorpion fall all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I learned that he couldn't fall normal. He had a Superman because his hip was out.
Oh, poor guy.
And I've watched David Gravett's career because I think he was a sweet kid. He got caught up in that whole thing. He was underage, drinking till he puked. It didn't matter. Nobody got in any. There was no problem with that underage.
It was all high fives and thumbs up.
And boy, if you grew up in New York and you saw the media coming out of the New York skateboarding scene and some of the terrible things that young men who were underage got roped into by the big leadership in the New York skateboarding scene on camera in the 90s, part of our videos, and you're like, this is it's criminal. Yeah. It's criminal. It's immoral. It's evil.
Right.
The destruction of childhood innocence through exposure to inappropriate sexual things shouldn't be something that's promoted in skateboarding. There's never been an article.
No.
Never been a question.
Right.
Anybody who's lifted a finger to say, hey, I think we should talk about what happened with our Under the Bridge and the crime that happened against a child.
Right.
They're gone.
Shut that shit down.
You get 86, they get driven out. You know, they might persist on the periphery, but they always have to give the loyalty.
Yeah.
We reject loyalty to Thrasher magazine. We have affection for Tony. We have affection for Marie Phelps and for the Phelps family.
Yeah.
We have affection for all of you. We had affection for Jake. We're very sad about the way things happened, about the way things are, and we're concerned that we might not use what we could be learning to make what will happen better.
Yeah.
And
I call on Thrasher to die like Boromir did in the Fellowship of the Ring. Do you remember that scene? It makes me cry every time, dude. He's driven by pride. The ring corrupts him. He tries to steal it from Frodo. Frodo runs away, and then he dies defending the other 2 hobbits. I love Lord of the Rings, but that's exactly. I mean, the redemption is so good. It's so good.
You said, I call on Thrasher to die
like Boromir,
in the Lord of the Rings.
That's right. That's who you're dealing with right now. That's the way I feel about it, dude. Because the redemption is total. Or like Anakin Skywalker did as Darth Vader. He is finally redeemed, dude.
That is
Don't
awesome.
get me started about the last 3 Disney movies. I'll freak out.
But you know, a lot of our listeners, you know, skateboarding as a family, a lot of our listeners have actual human families in which these things have to happen too. Someone who listens to us or who watches us has a family in which great evil is being done. And when great evil is being done, your obligation to loyalty is canceled. Even if you don't know what to do, you've got to find something to do and do it and mean it.
Right.
You could get murdered.
Yeah.
You could get murdered. I mean, it's really intense. But you've got to find your conscience, and you've got to honor it.
Yeah.
And our consciences are lost. You can see the lost conscience. Here's a case of a lost conscience. We've been trying to have this conversation. There's a lot of marketing money that's involved. I honestly, wow. Wow.
Is that the way we want to go out? You know, like laying on your deathbed, is that the way that people want to go out? I adjure you to not go out that way.
He adjures
Please.
you.
ADJURE
adjures you.
I plead with you. I've seen the damage it does in the personal life. We're all seeing the damage it did to Jake Phelps, and the way that I'd really like to talk about this just for a minute. The way that, okay, you feel like small things don't matter. You feel like, hey, he comes in wasted sometimes. It's just Jake, whatever. There is a line in the sand. Things build up and then spill over that line. Once they spill over that line, the cleanup is absolutely brutal. We should keep our trees trimmed down. Keep your hedges trimmed in your life, because once they're overgrown, it is a tremendous task to trim them back and get them to make sense. That's why I have been in conversations with many people about things way more important than how stupid skateboarding is. And I can see the pain in their face that I would bring up a topic that is so tremendously important. They wish that a horrible crime would be committed, and then I would be justified to behave with the intensity that I behaved. And I reject that entirely, because I'd much rather have the train not crash into another train going 60 miles an hour and everybody to die before we have a conversation about these things. But it happens every time somebody says, hey, the skate culture seems to be driving towards just total hedonism and the destruction of life. And they say, you're fucking crazy. I wish you would just shut the fuck up. I'm trying to skate.
You're not a real skateboarder.
You're not a real skateboarder.
You can't even kickflip.
You can't even kickflip.
Yeah.
On and on and on. When the entire time we're looking past the thing that's happening right in front of us, the turns we're making in front of us, and we're seeing the end result, which is the destruction of people's actual lives. And it is important to discuss, tremendously important. It drives me absolutely nuts, so crazy.
You picked the wrong heroes.
Yep.
Pick a better one.
He's trying to sell you a Bible. I'm sorry.
Go buy your own Bibles.
I'm sorry.
Buy yourself a Bible and crack it. What's ironic about this is all of the overt Luciferian and Baphomet and evil and fiery flames and stuff, they're all hints. They're all hints. All the calling evil good and good evil and all of that stuff. You know, the real answer in life lies in doing stuff like get a Bible, buy your own, get a Bible, and start reading.
Yeah,
you know, amazing things happen in my life when I started doing that very thing. Ironically, those things put me at odds with most of what is called church in our generation.
Crazy dog.
Yeah, it's
Crazy
so funny.
dog.
The more I read, and the more I experience the one who is spoken of in this book, the less I fit in with the American form of. It's a weird thing. That's for another podcast.
Right.
Now we're going to call it an end. We're grateful for the time that you spend with us. We hope that you guys can look beyond the trappings, the money, the fame, the glory, and look into the deeper things and see how very important it is for you to ruin Thanksgiving.
Yep. Go ahead and ruin one.
Yep. For what it's worth, this has been the CapmLew Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and most of the places where you get good podcasting.
Yes.
And also, this one is going up onto YouTube from the Facebook quality.
Yeah.
We port those over to our YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel. We are going to continue to, whatever this is, for as long as whenever we quit.
Yeah.
All right. We appreciate you all. We're no plans on quitting. None at all. Thanks, friends. We will catch you on the flip side. For what it's worth, I'm CapmLew.
Laters.